Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. We're talking weather and planting across the country, and western Kansas has been gripped by drought for at least a year, but recent rainfall might be making things interesting. This week's focus on agronomy for your acres with our friends from Nutrien Ag Solutions takes us to Leota, Kansas. We're going to talk with Dustin Fritzmeyer. Dustin, thanks for joining us this week.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the weather there outside Leota. Corn planting is wrapping up. You've had some recent moisture events. How do things look?
Things are looking pretty good. We just recently got a good inch to 3 inches of rain across a few counties here, and so things are looking pretty decent.
So for growers who maybe don't have all their corn yet in the ground, Dustin, is this a time to start looking at a shorter variety?
Well, that's always a question that comes up. We've hit June, when we spent some time making plans back in the fall about making sure we have the right variety hitting the right acre. And so we get a little antsy about, is the corn that I currently have a little too long of season? Is it going to have enough time to finish off? Am I going to be able to get wheat back in behind my corn? And so these questions do start coming up. And so what I like to tell our farmers is hey, stick to the game plan. If we made a game plan in the fall, let's try to get that particular hybrid in our fields. If we need to make some adjustments and go to some shorter season, we can do that too. But that's always a great opportunity to talk to your Nutrien Ag Solutions crop consultant and go over what hybrids they may have available.
Absolutely. It's always worthwhile to check the options. And Dustin, now that you've gotten some moisture in the ground along with this crop, it's time to be thinking post-emergence herbicide applications. What do you recommend this time of year?
Yes. So as soon as the corn gets in the ground, we've got some guys that are wanting to hit a one-pass program, and so they're going to front load their herbicide, their residual chemical, and they're going to get that into the field to prevent those weeds from coming up. Other guys that may be in a two-pass program that have got their initial pass, once the corn's been planted, they're going to come back in 21 days after that initial application and make sure they get that residual application done again. And so what a great time to be thinking about a product we have called Radiate. It's a plant growth hormone that's really designed to build up a robust root system, adding root hairs to that root ball, getting those roots deeper into the ground. It's accessing more water, more nutrients, making those things available to that plant to really set it up for its best yield potential later in season.
All right, Dustin, we've also got folks looking at test plots. What's it take to set up a plot, and what are the benefits of doing something like that?
Sure. I tend to think that most farmers get excited about test plots as junior high boys do about their personal hygiene. It's just kind of an afterthought. But I got to tell you, getting test plots out into our fields, it's a great benefit. Not only does it help us as crop consultants begin to look at new hybrids, see the comparisons of certain day lengths for out here in western Kansas. We're really looking for those products that provide a really tough plant that can produce some good top end yield. And so we're needing to get a good look at that. We want to be able to come to the farmer with a good amount of confidence of which products to recommend. But as a farmer, man, you get to look at certain varieties that work on your acres. We can look at plots across western Kansas here, but in Wichita County, we want to see what works here. And your farming practices might be different than somebody else's. What a great opportunity to figure out the agronomy that works on your acres.
That's a great point. Dustin Fritzmeyer, crop consultant, Leota, Kansas for Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thanks for talking with us this week.
You bet.
And you can learn more on the website, nutrienagsolutions.com. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Well, June, of course, is Dairy Month here in the United States, which meant for this market section, we're going to focus on what's happening in the dairy industry. To help me do that this week is Alyssa Badger. She's the Vice President of Global Operations and Insights at High Ground Dairy. Alyssa, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the dairy industry has seen a volatile past 8 weeks, but I want to start with where we were before that. What was the story in the dairy market up till about March?
Yeah, so we saw a pretty big correction in the marketplace because domestic demand was not great. And we also saw international demand pull back a little bit, lower sales into Asia. Japan and South Korea are big markets for us, and their demand really pulled back. So we were looking at some concerns about excess cheese supplies, and we do have a lot of cheese capacity coming online throughout 2024 as well as into 2025. So the concerns were, the domestic demand's not good now. Imagine when more cheese comes online. So that was kind of the talk of the town and the reason for that overcorrection that we saw in the marketplace.
All right, and then about mid-March into April and up through this past week, we've seen dairy go on an incredible rally. Alyssa, what changed?
Yeah, so what we know now is that when milk prices and cheese prices pulled back aggressively through Q1 and Q4 of last year, manufacturers started to produce less cheese, less commodity cheese anyway. So they would take the milk and cream and make mozzarella, cottage cheese, Gouda, anything but cheddar cheese because it was so cheap. Well, we sat at $1.40 per pound and we were the cheapest cheese in the world for 5 months straight. That meant the international market came back to the U.S. for some business, and we found that we overcommitted cheese at that point. So when domestic demand did come back a little bit, well, U.S. milk production's kind of struggling. We've been negative since last July, and we weren't able to respond to that increased need for cheese.
Okay, so now looking ahead, we've seen cheese pull Class 3 milk prices substantially higher over the past 8 weeks. Does cheese still look like a bullish spot into the summer?
You know, it does, especially if we get, in the forecast, we have a La Nina weather event in place, and that typically would mean a very hot summer. If that plays out and develops, we're looking at an even more volatile summer and potentially stronger cheese prices, even though we're already at $1.80 per pound.
All right. In addition to the cheese rally, I know in March we also saw the first stirrings of HPAI in the dairy herd. Has that had an impact on the markets?
Yeah, I would say if you look at April 1st or around the beginning of April when we started to hear the rumblings take off and headlines take over, you see milk prices take off a little bit more and more. So that news came out just as we realized we overcommitted cheese and had record cheese sales into Mexico. So we absolutely think that that had an impact on milk production. I mentioned earlier that we've been negative since last July, and where it's had the biggest impact has been in Texas. And I feel awful for farmers there because they dealt with wildfires not that long ago. There was a barn fire that 18,000 cows died, and milk production was already struggling. And then they had to deal with HPAI. So milk production's been down pretty aggressively throughout spring in Texas, and that's where a lot of the cheese capacity is coming from.
All right, so with milk production coming down, Alyssa, with this rally in prices, are producers on the farms making money at $19 a milk?
I would say things look better than they did, and these higher prices are pushing farmers to keep cows on farm longer to get as much out of their milk check as possible. What's concerning is that we still have high interest rates, so they want to pay down debt. That's the primary concern. And then as a result, we're not expanding or growing our herd sizes. So milk production likely will not come back the way it typically would when prices are around $20 per hundredweight.
Lots to watch as we get deeper into the summer. We'll be back with more on the dairy market with Alyssa Badger of High Ground Dairy. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFBF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. And we're back, starting Dairy Month by talking dairy with Alyssa Badger. She serves as the Vice President for Global Operations and Insights at High Ground Dairy. And Alyssa, thanks for joining us.
I'd love to be here.
Well, you mentioned the rally in the cheese market in the first segment, but that's not the only dairy product that's been on the move. Butter, as I understand it, has got quite a story.
That's right. Volatility is everywhere in dairy markets. So butter prices have actually been grinding higher pretty slowly from the beginning of the year. And as recent as last week, we're above $3 per pound, which is unheard of during spring because that's when we make the most milk. Typically, prices would be kind of range bound, flat right now, and prices don't typically peak until that Christmas holiday demand into the end of the year. Well, what happened is the last 2 years, budgets got really messed up because butter prices skyrocketed to $3.50 per pound, and people caught themselves short, or it wasn't in the budget to secure more butter. So what we have now, since that happened 2 years in a row, is end users are very nervous. So they're just buying hand to mouth and making sure they have enough butter, and we're finding that we have caught ourselves a little bit short. You wouldn't think that though, because the U.S. cold storage inventory situation shows that we have plenty of butter sitting in cold storage. It was actually quite bearish, and we saw butter prices pull back as a result. The problem is we think that the butter sitting in the inventories isn't CME eligible, which means it's probably unsalted butter for the bakery business or the 1 pound packs that they would use in the food service or at retail. And what we need is the CME eligible butter that we haven't been able to get our hands on.
So if we've got $3 butter already, what does that mean for fourth quarter, Alyssa? Is this rally just going to continue?
Oh boy, well, it does mean that the volatility is not over yet. And I do think if that hot summer does develop, that it is in the forecast, that yeah, we're looking at some strong butter prices into Q3 all the way through summer.
Oh man. So Alyssa, in the first segment, you also talked about record sales to Mexico of cheese this past year. I'm curious about on the other side of the Pacific. Asia, I know, is a big buyer or not. What has China been doing lately? What are you watching in Asia?
So China is a big market. They drive a lot of the commodities here in the U.S. They're a huge dairy importer. But as many people know, they are moving towards self-sufficiency or trying to. So what they did is they expanded their dairy herd over the last few years and saw massive milk production come online. Well, what that did is, during the pandemic, consumption pulled back a little bit, and they found themselves oversaturated with milk and milk powders. So they saw milk prices crash in China. It was a very ugly situation. It still is. But what the government's trying to do now is get rid of those dairy cows and reduce the herd size. We've heard anywhere between 1.3 to 2 million dairy cows.
Wow.
Yeah, so China's still sitting on some strong inventories, but what we think is that since they're moving toward reducing those stocks and culling their herd, that we'll see their demand come back by the end of the year.
All right, so for producers out there watching this rally happen, Alyssa, what should they be doing right now to take advantage of it?
Well, I think we are going to see some strong prices through most of this year, but keep your eye on Q4 because seasonally that's when prices will start to drop off once people have secured their needs for the holiday season. So you should be looking into DRP and locking in some rates by Q4.
All right, lock them in, buy them when you can, not when you have to. Alyssa Badger, Vice President, Global Operations and Insights with High Ground Dairy. Thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, thanks for helping us start off Dairy Month with a bang.
Very proud.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, indeed. It's time to bring that weather into focus. Greg Solier is here. And Greg, it was an active week out in the Pacific Northwest. Is it going to be again?
Yeah, real roller coaster ride of temperatures in particular. We had some snow and some of the mid and high level peaks last week. We'll do it again this week, and it reversed itself last week into a spell or two of some heat as far north as the sections of Idaho. We'll probably do it again this week. Welcome to mid to late springtime in the Pacific Northwest. But anything else is a benefit considering the lack of real substantial snow this past wintertime season. So here it is, cooler air and probably a little whimper of frost in areas east of the Cascades where sky is clear, winds do drop back. To the east, we'll be watching thunderstorm clusters. We did get some areas into the high plains sections of Nebraska and Kansas last week. So that's the story early in the week. And look, we reversed the up air pattern from the trough to the arcing ridge, and that allows for some of the heat to build north and sink on down as well. So readings may be up close to 90 again into parts of the central Rockies. Heat from Salt Lake City City on southward into the desert southwest. Meanwhile, we do get a push of cooler and drier air, a pattern shift here with maybe another broadening window of opportunity for areas off to the east across the Corn Belt. Weak disturbance offshore in the Pacific Northwest of no consequence. Readings were up into the mid-90s last week into the central Sacramento valleys. Are winding down on the last of cotton planting there in the desert southwest areas of Arizona. Boy, the heat, this northern extent here, capping off the atmosphere into the Rio Grande Valley. We may spark a thunderstorm into the Red River Valley of the south. Cooler air in the wake of last week's storms from about Goodland and Garden City back into the high plains areas of Colorado, at least nibbling away at the ongoing dryness and drought. The epicenter still into this particular part of the winter wheat belt. We do get some cooler, drier air with high pressure building on in. We may try to bust the atmospheric cap in a couple of strong storm clusters as we saw last week into parts of West Texas cotton and cattle country. Hot weather back in the Four Corners building on northward, and seasonal weather across the valleys of California. Little or no moisture there, as you would expect for the time of year.
Well, I know growers in the northern Corn Belt would like a period with no moisture. Greg, is that coming next week?
Yeah, we have to get past the middle part of the week once again. These little disturbances kind of rippling along a west to east upper air flow, slow moving frontal boundary. And so once again, we'll keep an eye out maybe for a couple of downpours of rain, some severe weather potential too as the early to middle part of the week progresses. Meanwhile, cooler, drier air had a little whimper of frost into the upper Midwest Great Lakes areas last week. That frontal boundary here is on the move, and here is the jet stream winds in from northwest to southeast. Note the absence of organized moisture, another broadening window of opportunity here late in the coming week for outdoor work and field work and planting operations as long as those soils are well drained. Overall, though, relatively good progress here has been made in the corn and soybean planting. Pockets, yeah, maybe some replanting as well. Otherwise, again, opportunities later on into the week. Here is the atmospheric cap. They'll probably set records into the Rio Grande Valley areas of central and western Texas, coming off another round or two at least of triple-digit readings along the western Gulf Coast area. High humidity in a front, maybe sparking some additional showers and thunderstorms, but it's been this corridor here that has just been beat up repeatedly this springtime season. So cooler, drier air down to about the northern end of the delta. The heat lingers across parts of West Texas into the desert southwest, but opportunities as well over the far southern Corn Belt later in the week.
What are you seeing as you look to the eastern seaboard, Greg?
Again, clusters of scattered daily 30 to 50% coverage, showers and thunderstorms, dry hours each day, maybe some net drying overcoming any of these thunderstorms that do break out, maybe some severe weather potential as well. Nothing unusual for this point into June, by the way. Welcome to meteorological summertime. Quiet high pressure over the northeast of New England, where we do move shower and thunderstorm activity to this part of the country later in the week with cooler, drier, and a multi-day opportunity for outdoor work and field work across the Corn Belt, soils permitting, as we move on to the late portion of the week. Triple-digit readings into parts of the Gulf Coast areas will set records for high temperatures for the month of May here down through areas of Florida. Hot weather across the Gulf Coast. Storm clusters continue in the northern delta on westward.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hi-Pro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Recently, I had the chance to travel to Washington, D.C. to talk about ag issues with legislators and regulators. And one of the politicians I had the chance to speak with was Nikki Budzinski. She's a Democrat representing Illinois, the area around Decatur, home to the Farm Progress Show. I asked her what's happening around Decatur, what is she excited about, and, well, she had a lot to say.
I often say on the House Agriculture Committee that from Decatur to Champaign, we are the ag tech corridor of the country. And I really believe that we are on the precipice of finding out some really exciting news potentially for Decatur in particular, which is the designation potentially of a tech hub. A tech hub specifically that they call IFAB for bioprocessing and fermentation.
So what would bioprocessing and fermentation look like? What will be done at the hub?
Yeah, so bioprocessing and fermentation is actually taking agricultural waste. As you know, Macon County, Piatt County, Champaign County, we're some of the top producers and growers of corn and soybean. So it's taking agricultural waste that is created through that production and actually, rather than moving it into a landfill, repurposing it for different purposes. I like to give the example that it's actually moving agricultural waste and creating yoga pants. We know today Lululemon, a company very profitable, very popular, actually is using bioprocessed material to create yoga pants today. And I highlight that as one exciting example of kind of the endless potential of what bioprocessing and fermentation could mean for our family farmers. We have ADM and Primient that are located, two top agricultural companies in the world, right there in Decatur, and the University of Illinois, along with some of our community colleges like Parkland Community College and Richland Community College. They are all collectively a part of this really exciting application for this Tech Hub designation.
If the application is granted, what would it look like for the city of Decatur, for the community? What would you receive?
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. It's up to a $70 million investment from the federal government through the Economic Development Administration to invest in more research, more infrastructure around bioprocessing and fermentation. I would also highlight the other thing that's very exciting is almost at the same time, we are going to find out about a very competitive workforce development grant that is partnered with this Tech Hub, IFAP. The Workforce Development Grant is actually called Recompete, and it's an application through Richland Community College, a neighbor of the Farm Progress Show, and actually the only community college in the country that qualified as a finalist for this workforce development grant. What it would mean for Decatur is it is training the workforce of the future to be involved and to get good paying jobs in bioprocessing and fermentation.
Thanks so much to Representative Nikki Budzinski for taking the time to fill us in on those initiatives coming to the Decatur area. You know, one of the things she mentioned a lot was bioprocessing. And as we think about the words in use today, biotech, bioprocessing, bioeconomy, boy, that bio prefix sure is popular. But what is it? What does it mean, and what aspects of the industry are we watching? Well, I also had the chance to catch up with Beth Elakidis. She is the vice president of BIO, the Association of Biotech Companies, and I asked her, what does BIO mean?
Any company that uses genetically modified products. So we represent 1,000 member companies, and we range from Fortune 500 to 1 or 2 person startups.
So bio has been around a little while, but the industry seems to have gotten a lot more attention in recent years. Beth, for those of us outside the world of biotech, has it been growing?
It has. The industry is, I would say, growing rapidly by storm, and that's a good thing. I'd say a lot of our member companies are really reaching sort of a point where they need support from the regulators. I would say for the most part, our regulators have our back. In recent years, we've really gotten a strong signal from the administration that they are supportive of biotechnology, but at the same time, a lot of my groups or a lot of my member companies have to go to 3 different agencies in order to get something approved. So it could be time consuming, it could be duplicative, and of course it can also be very expensive.
Yes, you said the regulators working with 3 different regulatory bodies. Beth, fill our audience in. Who are those 3 and what type of work do you need to do with them?
Well, I'm sure you all are very familiar with USDA, so that is one of the 3, and then we of course have FDA, and then everyone's also favorite is EPA, although I joke. I would say we have a great relationship with all 3. I would say that even though we're seeking coordination, I would say that they do a very good job of trying to coordinate with the resources they have. I would say they also all need more resources in order to get that coordination even better, again, to avoid duplicative efforts for our member companies.
So as you look out over this summer, it's an election year, Beth, so there's the opportunity to drive some headlines. What would the member companies of BIO like to see happen, either in Congress or in the presidential race this year?
Well, we would like a farm bill, just like everyone else. We do have several projects or programs that we would like to see passed in the farm bill. Some of them are regarding plant protectants, so PIPs, and then we also have biostimulants language. We, of course, have language in there that would change how things are categorized when they're procured from the government. So if something is a biotechnology procured item, that would be classified in a different way. So that's also in the Farm Bill. And, of course, if you do that, then those items would get procured more, and then, of course, they would maybe be better used throughout the industry.
Well, and with the text of that farm bill out, at least on the House side, now these associations have some language that they can discuss and negotiate as the legislation moves forward. Thanks to Beth Elakitis for filling us in on the work of BIO, the Association of Biotech Companies. Folks, we've got a lot of enthusiasm in agriculture for drones, and that's nothing new. They've been out for about 10 years. But in this week's tech segment, Chad Colby later on in the program will unveil the drone in a box, a concept that was new to me, and he'll have the details, so stick around.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. And it's no surprise that some growers have been struggling to get the crop in this season, and one of those states that's been having issues is Iowa. Joining me now for an update is Dwayne Murley. He's the farm director at KWMT 540 AM out of Fort Dodge, Iowa. And Dwayne, thanks for joining us today.
Well, yeah, thank you for the invitation, Mike. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Well, give us an update from the ground, Dwayne. How planted are folks around that west central Fort Dodge, Iowa area?
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, it's been a tough month of May, and I don't think that comes as any surprise. We here at the radio station, and I'm sure we were probably on the low end of it, we had 5 inches of rain here in downtown Fort Dodge throughout the month of May, and like I said, it's been tough. And in fact, since the end of April, a lot of farmers may have only had 1 or 2 days, that were suitable to get out in the field, so some really short windows. But we're still sitting at about 25% of the soybeans that need to be planted, and still at about 10% of our corn needs to be planted too. So, we're not far off the annual pace, but still just a little bit behind here.
A little bit behind. And Dwayne, I know you have the chance to get into the field each year as well. And what did you experience this year? What was soil conditions when you were getting the crop in?
Yeah, they were really good, actually. In the farm family that I help south of Rockwell City, the Carver family, I was able to get out and run the field cultivator ahead of the planter and spent several days and evenings doing that. And for what I saw, I thought the ground was working really, really well, Mike. And some of that was tillage that was done last fall. So I was just going back in and conditioning it ahead of the planter. But honestly, from what I saw, things were really, really good when it came to getting out into the field.
Well, that is fantastic. Dwayne, another thing that I've seen floating around on social media, and maybe you could help provide some insight, rotary hoes are popular again. It seems like in your part of the world. What's going on there on the ground?
Yeah, and I think that all comes down to the fact that the seeds were planted, and a lot of guys got an early start in April, and then we got the rain starting the last week in April, and some of that ground got compacted, and maybe a little challenge for the seed to get through the ground. And a lot of the guys are pulling the rotary hose out of the groves and putting them back on the tractors and going out and doing some rotary hoeing. And haven't seen any this week, but probably 2.5 weeks or so ago, I did see some rotary hose out. So yeah, the rotary hose have been rolling here in the state of Iowa this spring.
Kind of a sight from a bygone era. Dwayne, we've seen Iowa in the headlines a lot this past month due to severe weather. Greenfield, Corning, both hit by tornadoes. Fort Dodge, your neck of the woods, any severe weather impacts to be concerned about?
No, nothing like that. And of course, we're all thinking of Greenfield and the parts of southwest Iowa that have been impacted, but no, nothing to that extent, Mike.
All right, Dwayne, and finally, farmer attitudes. How are they feeling there in the Fort Dodge area?
I think good. We're starting to see some sprayers roll again. We're seeing some planters get back out into the fields. And of course, we're starting to see some replanting as well right now. And I have to tell you, we're not hearing a lot of talk about prevent planting. So I think that's probably positive. Pastures are looking good. Cow calves are out on pastures. Things are green out there. So I think we're rolling along pretty good, Mike.
Rolling along pretty good. That's Dwayne Murley, KWMT 540 AM. Dwayne, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
Greg Solier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Greg Solier is back with a look at the extended forecast. And Greg, you mentioned moisture next week. Who's going to see what?
Fair to good covering of additional showers and thunderstorms. And of course, about 10 days ago had upwards of 4.5, close to 5 inches of rain to parts of central Illinois. And there may be pockets of another inch or two. Not coming, we think, all at once, but in clustered activity as the week wears on, first half of the week across the Corn Belt locales. So again, some fieldwork delays. Others should be able to take the moisture in without much of an issue. Up and down the eastern seaboard for later in the week, some pretty good moisture anticipated, and we should be able to get at least a couple of scattered storm clusters breaking some of the heat across the Gulf Coast. Not much going on with a capped off atmosphere across western and southern Texas. Little, if any, organized moisture as you would expect in the southwestern part of the country, and some spotty moisture into the Pacific Northwest at a quarter to maybe a half inch out there.
All right, Greg, let's talk temperatures in that week of June 10th. What do you see?
Overall, again, the weather pattern is as it ought to be for warmth. Yeah, some warmth coming back into play. And if you're even keeled, hopefully, in the soil moisture department, some good and rapid crop emergence and development has been noted. This should be the story as well. Some warmth into the eastern Corn Belt, some maybe midsummer-like heat back west of the Missouri into areas of the Intermountain West, the warmth into the Pacific Northwest, just a little sliver of the lingering cool air into the northeast New England. And if you're still behind the 8-ball, you can get it wrapped up here, we think. Soils permitting across the Corn Belt locale. Some wet weather over the southeastern part of the country. Down through Texas, we think we'll try to lessen the cap here. Little, if anything, in the desert southwest is, again, you expect for the time of year outside of the monsoon season.
Week of June 17th, summer kicks off. Greg,
Yep.
Does it feel summery?
It will in some areas of the country, and right here really suppressed down through the western and southern areas of the country with a jet stream wind in from the northwest to southeast orientation. So there's a push of cooler air, not long-lasting heat. That's okay. A little sliver of below across the St. Lawrence River Valley and some chilly air across the eastern Canadian prairies. So temperatures pretty much across the heartland behaving normal. Same with the precipitation pattern. That's generally about a quarter to half inch for this point in mid-June across the Corn Belt locales. Normal precip up towards the Canadian border, Pacific Northwest, high and dry from Texas back into California, and the last of the showers and thunderstorms winding through the southeastern states and up and down the eastern seaboard into the northeast into New England.
What do you see, Greg, as you look to the end of the month of June?
From a temperature standpoint, the heat is back into play, and I think this may be a concern showing up on some of the elements, some of the parameters on the longer range weather maps and charts. That may be something we have to deal with getting deeper into summertime around here with the hot ridge establishing itself here, a winding down of El Nino. So heads up on some heat as you would expect for mid to late June, and perhaps even well above average, well into the maybe mid 90-degree range into parts of the central Corn Belt. Cooling off from areas of the divide on westward, and high and dry weather here. Gulf Coast is active with showers and thunderstorms or winding out of the heat wave weather pattern there into the Pacific Northwest. It remains an active weather pattern here for mid to late June. We'll keep an eye on the tropics as well. Indications that those could be busy here as we get deeper on into the Atlantic Basin here through the month of June and beyond.
This segment is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. Well, on this week's Farm Progress Roundup, we're not talking to a writer or an editor. We're talking to one who makes the wheels turn, Mr. Matt Caniglio. You serve as the Senior Director for Strategic Accounts at Farm Progress. Matt, thanks for talking to us this week.
Great to be here.
Let's talk about you and Farm Progress. How long have you been involved with the company?
This is my 13th year, and it's been a great ride, a great journey. We have the opportunity every year to meet new people, and more importantly, we get to help customers all across the United States.
You do. You work directly with the companies who are reaching out to farmers. Matt, let's talk about how we do that. One of the most important ways I know Farm Progress handles that is with the show. Have you been a part of putting together those kind of product announcements for companies?
Yeah, every year at the Farm Progress Show and at Husker Harvest Days, we have multiple product launches from multiple companies. So we have the opportunity to help those clients get front and center. Both of our events are the largest gathering of ag media anywhere. So as you're telling your story about your new product service, you are able to do that in the manner of having lots of coverage for yourself. And we help everybody each year get that off the ground.
Get those farmers connected with the newest innovations in agriculture. Matt, that seems kind of what the Farm Progress Show is all about.
Absolutely, and that's why from a farmer's perspective, that's why both of those events are terrific, because you get the opportunity to be in person, up front, close and personal, talk to a product specialist, even maybe an engineer that actually created that piece of equipment or a new product or service, and you get the opportunity to ask questions. Farming in Indiana is different than Iowa, than Minnesota, so maybe there's something specific about your farm that you would want to know how that product will work for you. So it's a really great opportunity to be front and center with those folks.
Absolutely, the folks who are making those buying decisions on the farm. Matt, but of course, Farm Progress Show is just 3 days. Husker Harvest Days, just 3 days. How does Farm Progress, or how do you help companies tell the story after those shows?
Yeah, so after you have that opportunity to be front and center, then you have the opportunity to kind of reinforce that message. We've got multiple media platforms that allow you to do that, print magazines that come into your home every month, digital opportunities to go onto websites, text blasts that'll come to your phone, a broadcast program just like this one here. So we have multiple touch points with farmers throughout the years to continue to tell that story for that company.
Absolutely. Matt, Farm Progress Show will be here before we know it. You excited for this year?
Yeah, every year is an exciting year. Both Husker, Harvest Days, and Farm Progress Show always bring new ideas and obviously lots of product launches and new latest and greatest technology.
There's always something to see when you're at Farm Progress or Husker Harvest Days. Matt Caniglio, thank you so much for talking with us this week.
Al, thanks for having me.
And folks, stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness coming when we return.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. In the shed this weekend, I'm interested in pictures you might have of Dad on the tractor, and I have some ideas for Father's Day gift giving too. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, with Father's Day weekend coming up, I was thinking about getting some good shots of Dad on the tractor, some shots from you. Here's a photograph I have of my dad on the Super H just before it left the farm in southwestern Indiana. Photographs of Dad are cherished, of course, and I would like to have some that you might have of your father. They need to be good quality that we could show on television. Give me some good horizontal shots. Send them to me at themaxarmstrong@gmail.com. themaxarmstrong@gmail.com. If you're looking for gifts for Father's Day, Paul Wallam's book is a good one. Our friend Paul Wallam has come out with another book. It's called The Drives of My Life. He talks about driving everything from combines and tractors to international trucks. The Fujifilm blimp was in his hands at one point, and he drove a military tank. You can get his book at paulwallam.com. Lee Cloncher's book, The Farmall Century, still available along with many other great titles that Lee has come out with. OctanePress.com. Oh yes, and there's still the Max Armstrong book, More Stories from the Heartland, our second book that we came out with last year, MaxArmstrongBook.com. We have the book on Mark Stock. You can bet on that. Here he is reporting in from Big Iron Auctions.
Hello, Max. Big Iron will be conducting the Todd Sulzberger Estate Sale on Tuesday, June the 4th, items located in Hornick, Iowa, including a 2023 Case IH Steiger 540 quad track tractor, only 140 hours. A low acre 2023 Case IH Early Riser 2150 16 row 30 planter, 2020 Case IH 7250 combine, with 756 separator hours. On Wednesday, June the 5th, Bowl Family Farms in McCune, Kansas will sell a John Deere 1850 air seeder with a cart and 2 John Deere 4-wheel drive 30 series tractors. Also on June the 5th, Stearns Farms Inc. will sell a 2021 John Deere S780 combine. 1,333 items Max will sell on Wednesday, June the 5th on Big Iron. And then Max, on Monday, June the 10th, Van Wall Equipment Inc., John Deere dealer with multiple locations across Iowa, will sell late model equipment, 2022 year model machines, 412R self-propelled sprayer, John Deere 6155M mechanical front tractor with a loader, and many more high-quality items. All the machinery you're looking for, Max, is selling to the highest bidder with no reserves on Big Iron.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. This week, we're getting to know part of the Illinois State Officer Team. Joining us is Thaddeus Bergschneider. He's serving this year as the president of the Illinois State FFA. And Thaddeus, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. It's nice to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. Thaddeus, did you grow up on a farm or in a rural area?
Yep, I grew up on a farm in central Illinois, Franklin, Illinois. My family grows corn, soybeans, raised cattle, and then as I grew up, I got my own bottle calf and started raising turkeys myself too. So a little bit of hobby projects, but a small family farm.
That's fantastic. And what was it then that prompted you to be a part of FFA?
I really came in my freshman year and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do FFA, which is crazy coming from a farm. But I was thinking, maybe I need to take more dual credit classes, get ready for college. But it was a conversation with my dad where he told me that FFA has something for everybody. And if that's public speaking and a little bit different than the way that me and your brother were in FFA, it doesn't matter, but you're going to find something for you. And so I tried it, and here we are.
What were your favorite aspects of FFA in high school?
I really loved the LDEs, the leadership development events. Extemporaneous public speaking and ag sales were probably my two favorite events that I got to compete at. And then, of course, my SAE, raising the turkeys. I really enjoyed that a lot, but it was the LDEs that got me interested.
And so now you're taking a year off from school to serve a year of service as president of the FFA. And what's that like, living and working together with the other state officers?
It's a pretty crazy social experiment. The five of us get elected. We don't know if we're going to college or if we're taking a year off. And then in a couple hours, all of a sudden, wow, your plans for the next year change. You get elected, and then the five of you spend a year together, sleep in the same hotel rooms, work in the same space. It really gets you closer to these individuals than you've ever been to anyone in your life. They feel like family now. I mean, it's honestly more than just being brothers and sisters. It's a work relationship and being so close. And really that team aspect has made us better people, and I think it's also helped us serve our FFA members better.
I certainly think it would. Thaddeus, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this week. We always love seeing what FFA is working on with that next generation.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Chad Colby has been one that has been teaching me about drones for about 10 years. He's always got the next thing to unveil. This week, he's got a new concept in the world of drones. Let's check it out.
I definitely agree that drones are a disruptive technology. The good news is here in the last several years, the regulation with the FAA has allowed us to use this disruptive technology in ways we never thought was possible. Certainly the sprayer fits in that case, right? What about this? This is called Drone in the Box. This is DJI's Dock 2. I had the opportunity to get my hands on one here this past week and put it through the paces. And let me tell you, it's fantastic. So certainly, as you can see here, this was screen recorded from my computer. And you can see I'm remotely operating the drone. Now, the other thing that I believe is very interesting in this is it's a price point that's not terrible. The entire system I'm using is about $15,000, and that includes the $4,000 or $5,000 drone like you see here. I got the version that's made for doing mapping. They also have a thermal version that would be amazing on a ranch. The software allows you to create maps like you see right here. I mapped out my backyard and pushed a couple buttons, and this thing went and took the pictures. When the drone's done, it simply goes back in the box closes, and then guess what? It downloads the data and sends it wherever you like. Maybe you use DJI's Terra software, or you send that data to companies like Drone Deploy, which we map fields with or do stand counts, all those fun things with. The thing about this that is so impressive is the technology. You can see the system coming in here to land, and that box has got more stuff in it than you can imagine. Automation to charge the battery in like 30 minutes, all the security with cameras. It's got a battery backup, a weather station, dual RTK antennas. I could go on. And matter of fact, Mike, I probably will in upcoming tech segments. Pretty amazing technology. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Well, Chad, I'm going to look forward to learning more about that drone in a box on your future segments. Thanks for sending that in this week. And folks, leave it here. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we come back. HPAI, or highly pathogenic avian influenza. It's been making waves in the dairy industry since it was reported in herds in Texas about 8 weeks ago. Since then, it's spread, and it's caused a group of professionals to become interested in managing it. Recently, I talked with Ted McKinney, the CEO of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, about what his members are doing to combat the disease.
I'll speak for my members because they are that front lines. Well, first of all, I think we came together as an organization, we being the state director, secretary, commissioner, the leader, with their state vet, and sometimes a lot of people that surround both. And I think the states got organized pretty quickly. Now, there was a lot of frustration because they wanted data, they needed data, they had to make decisions on data, and the data just was not there. But they made the decisions, and I think most of them made that absolutely right, given the lack of good data and an understanding. I would say right after that fog of the first 2 or 3 weeks, which was applicable to APHIS and FDA and our members and the world, we settled in with a really good cadence. So twice a week we are visiting with APHIS, the USDA APHIS crowd, who we have known and long time worked with, high trust, high candor, and that's been so valuable. The same goes for the FDA's Center for Veterinary Medicine. Each of them has a role in this. You know, one has the animal, one has the milk and the dairy from the animal. Those have been going well. High trust, high candor, no space between us, and that's been terrific. Now, more recently, after that single incident of a human getting it, the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, and HHS got involved. We are working very hard to get to know them and understand where they're going. And I'd be less than honest if I didn't say there's some worry that there might be going a little too far, too fast. So I think our members are in a good place where they are trying to test what's real, not pressing that farmer or that processor beyond a point that that they don't want to go, but at the same time trying to do right by the science, trying to do right by the human element, and certainly do right by the animal element.
Thanks to Ted McKinney there, CEO of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, for taking the time to fill us in on their members' responses to this ongoing HPAI outbreak. Now, since Mr. McKinney and I had the chance to speak, there has been a second confirmed case of humans contracting HPAI. It was in Michigan, no doubt keeping the focus on all those interagency interactions. Be sure to join us next time right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.